Welcome to today's webinar, where we'll cover the 5 foundations of a successful mortgage origination business. I'm your host, Mike Merriam. Today we're going to quickly cover the 5 foundational areas that every originator must master in order to be sustainably successful. Those areas are time management, lead generation, process, growth and team building, and mindset or accountability. Before we jump in, let me introduce myself. My name is Mike Merriam, and I have spent 20 of the past 22 years as a loan officer and manager. Over the past 6 years, I've coached hundreds, if not over 1,000 loan officers. Over this time of closing countless loans and working on the ground level, so many loan officers at various production levels, I've learned that this entire business can be synthesized down to 5 foundational areas. And if you follow some basic practices in each of these areas, you're essentially guaranteed success. Let's cover a couple of ground rules for this webinar so that you can get the most out of it. First, my friend and mentor Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, told me this and it always stuck with me. He said, "Never leave the scene of wisdom without taking action." Anytime you learn something new or draw a new distinction around something or find yourself in an aha moment, take immediate action to implement the idea. We're drowning in a sea of ideas and starving for execution. So always seek to implement immediately after learning. Start with the smallest action that will begin to build momentum. Second, don't multitask. Turn your notifications off right now. Hit pause and close your inbox, put your phone on Do Not Disturb, and close your door if you have one. Get yourself a pen and paper and give 100% attention to this webinar. You will learn something. You can then implement what you've learned. But if you allow yourself to multitask during this presentation, chances are it'll be a waste of your time. Finally, before we get into the first foundation, I need you to call up a mental picture of what you want your business to look like in the future. Project yourself a year down the road, then 3 years, then 5. What is it that you want to build? Hit pause and take a minute or two to think through this. Get a rough idea of where you want your business to go and what it will take to get there, then come back and hit play. Don't take too long and don't get distracted. Okay, now let's get into it. Before we can talk about actual techniques and tactics of managing time, generating more leads, streamlining processes, and building your team, we first have to get in the right frame of mind. Mindset is an often overlooked component of getting things done, which is a major oversight because it's literally all the difference. This business is filled with emotion. It's filled with craziness and nonstop fires to put out. The right mindset is an anchor. It's a way to create stability during the storm. It's something to return to over and over again when circumstances beyond your control get you flustered and off your game. Let's talk about the top producer mindset. Maintaining a chosen mindset isn't easy. It takes constant redirection and a commitment to centering yourself and returning to core principles when you're under stress. Like anything, however, it gets easier the more you practice. As long as you keep this top of mind every day, each day will get easier to maintain. In the 5 Foundations coaching program, we go into this in great detail. For the sake of your time and for you to get as much out of this webinar as possible, let's talk about the 2 most important aspects of the top producer mindset. First, extreme ownership. You are a loan originator. You are the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end. The buck stops with you. Everything that happens is your fault, good or bad. While there's a lot of things outside your control in the loan process, you own the predictability of the deal and the communication on the deal. So anything that happens is your responsibility. You're going to make mistakes all the time for the rest of your career. That's okay. Take full ownership of them and put systems in place so they don't happen again and again. Second, persistence. Never get dejected. Never allow the inertia of fear or anxiety or disbelief to prevent you from taking action to move forward. There is no force in this world that can stop or overcome constant persistence. You will eventually break through as long as you don't stop trying. Keep these principles in mind all day, every day. Extreme ownership and nonstop persistence. When you make a mistake or when you fail, learn from it and keep moving forward. Okay, now that you're in the right state of mind, let's get into actual tactics for operating your business. Time management, the most fundamental of the 5 foundations. Nothing else can happen if you don't master time. You won't be able to effectively generate leads, you won't be able to create, implement, and perfect processes, and you won't be able to grow your business to the point where you're ready to hire more support. You'll be on a hamster wheel or a roller coaster or whatever other analogy you want to use for remaining stagnant. Again, in the 5 Foundations coaching program, we go into extreme detail on time management and how to apply it to each day. But for this webinar, I want you to leave with actionable strategies that don't require you to buy the program and get extreme value from your time today. So here's the main points. First, time management is a choice, not a skill. Let me repeat that. Time management is a choice, not a skill. It's actually a series of choices. And the very first choice is to choose to be responsive versus reactive. Have you ever had a day where it feels like all you did was react to what was coming at you? Maybe the better question is there ever a day where you don't do this? Most of us spend all our time reacting, when what we need to do is know the difference between what's important and what's urgent, and make a conscious decision that only certain things will take us off task. Call it an order of operations. What's most important, and what's the priority level of all the regular distractions you're hit with each and every day? How will you react or respond when these predictable distractions happen? Get this plan straight in your head and on paper and commit to it each and every morning. Second, use the 80-20 rule as your guide. Live by it. 80% of results come from 20% of actions. This is a fact everywhere you look. Decide what the 20% of actions are that drive 80% of results in your business. Hint, there's 3: learning, lead generation, and loan building. Learning, leads, and loans. You'll need time dedicated each day to these 3 things. Do this, and the compound effect will bring you success. So here's the taking action part. I'll give you a very simple 90-minute-a-day plan to make this 20% a daily anchor. Ready? Write this down. Grab your pen, write this down. Spend 25 minutes learning something. You can just read guidelines, which, by the way, I recommend for every loan officer to do all the time, even those who have been in business for many years. Constantly reading guidelines is probably the fastest way to separate yourself from your competition and make you sound confident during sales calls. Or you can learn a new tool or software, do some market research. Anything you can spend 25 minutes learning a little about. After 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break to refresh your mind. It's important to say this 25 minutes needs to be distraction-free. Now spend 25 minutes generating leads. Pick up the phone and call agents and go through your scripting, which I'll cover soon, and share what you've learned during your 25 minutes of learning. After 25 minutes of this, take another 5-minute break. Finally, spend 25 minutes working at a higher level view. People call this working on your business rather than in your business. Design processes, scripts, templates. Make your process of going from lead to funding easier, more consistent, and more predictable. I'll also cover this soon. But to wrap up time management for today, remember, it's a choice. Respond rather than react. Use the 80-20 rule and do the 3 25-minute activities I just told you to do. If you have any questions on what we've talked about so far, write them down so you can send them to me at the end of the webinar, and I'll respond personally to every question. Let's move on to the next foundation, lead generation. If there's one takeaway from time management that's most important, it's that lead generation needs to be a daily anchor for you. You have to carve out time every single day for lead generation, or you will not grow sustainably. We all make excuses to put off lead generation time. We're too busy, there's too many fires to put out, blah, blah, blah. This is all bull. The reason most people don't generate leads every day is because they're either afraid of rejection, not confident enough in their value proposition, don't know who to call and or don't know what to say, aka call reluctance. It's real and it affects everyone regardless of skill or experience level. The good news is there's a way to overcome this, allowing you to spend time every single day lead generating. And guess what happens when you do this? You put yourself in a no-lose situation. There's no better analogy to talk about this than baseball. In baseball, if you succeed in getting a hit 3 out of every 10 at-bats, you're a Hall of Famer. If you succeed 4 out of 10, you're the best player in history. So the greatest players experience failure way more than they experience success. It's the nature of the game itself. Sales calls for you are the same. You just need 1 or 2, and if you're awesome, 3 out of every 10 to give you a positive reply. The problem is call reluctance prevents most loan officers from giving themselves enough at-bats for the law of averages to take over. Everybody wins with the law of averages. The only way you lose is by not stepping into the batter's box and making calls every day. But first, we have to overcome call reluctance. This is as simple as knowing who to call and what to say and being able to say it the same exact way with the same exact words, tone of voice, and inflection every single time. Yes, a script. Have you ever cried during a movie? Shoot, I cry at commercials sometimes. We all know the person on the screen is an actor reading lines and that there's a camera and that it's not real. So why do we cry? Why do we feel the emotions of the scene when we know it's not real? Because filmmakers have created an environment where we're ready to allow messages in, and the actor has perfected and delivered the lines. Sales calls aren't that much different. If you can disarm the person on the other end of the phone using a simple psychological trick, and read them a script that doesn't sound like a script, but rather sounds like a compelling, customized, real-world value proposition with sincerity and excitement, then your message will indeed land. It's not that hard. It just takes practice. Now, I could talk about lead generation for days, and in the 5 Foundations coaching program, we go deep on this. So deep that you'll never struggle to generate leads again. But for today, if you follow one strategy, and make sure to track it, you'll find success. That strategy is create a script, learn to read it so it doesn't sound like a script and it's delivered confidently, each time the same exact way, and then find out who you're going to call, sit down with your script, and commit to making the call and emotionally disconnect from the results of that call. Read your script, forget about the results. Do it over and over and over again without caring about the results, and you will allow the law of averages to take over, and you will get 1, 2, or 3 positive responses out of every 10. It's that simple. All right, let's keep moving on. It's time to talk about process. This subject is way too involved to solve on one 45-minute webinar, but I want to share what I know to be the first principles so that you can follow them to streamline your process as you move a loan from lead to funding and beyond, and then leave you with an actionable strategy that will yield results. If you've made the choice to manage your time well, to be responsive rather than reactive, if you've decided to leverage the 80-20 rule and make lead generation an anchor of each and every day, then you'll now be bringing in a significantly higher number of leads. You're going to need bulletproof processes to manage these leads and convert them to pre-approvals. Then you'll need bulletproof processes to convert your pre-approvals to contracts and your contracts to close loans. The main reason most loan officers take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back is they either don't have a detailed process written out on paper that they follow all the time, or if they do, they compromise that process for the path of least resistance. I know for a fact that most just don't have any consistent processes that they follow. So let's give you the building blocks of creating one. Hint, get your pen, write this down. First, the loan can be broken down into 5 phases. The phases are lead to pre-approval, pre-approval to contract, contract to conditional underwriting approval, conditional underwriting approval to funding, and post-closing. Let me cover that again. Lead to pre-approval, pre-approval to contract, contract to conditional underwriting approval to funding, post-closing. Within each of these phases, there's a trigger and a series of actions that must be determined, ordered, written, implemented, and adhered to. Right? That's a mouthful. Within each of these phases, there's a trigger and a series of actions that must be determined, ordered, written, implemented, and adhered to. For example, let's look at the first phase, lead to pre-approval. The trigger is a lead arrives. When a lead arrives, this triggers a series of actions that must be performed. It's up to you to determine what the actions are, who will perform them, what the SLAs are, and how you'll track it. Now, if you're not familiar with the term SLA, then you need to listen closely. This is the most important term you'll need to leverage to build a consistent process. An SLA is a service level agreement. These are used all the time in operations. Your CEO and all the way down the chain to operations managers use SLAs to track and manage performance and timetables for all the milestones on loads. In its simplest description, an SLA is a time commitment to take an action based on a trigger. So in this example, the trigger is a lead arrives. A good SLA would be that you'll attempt to make contact with this lead within 20 minutes or an hour or whatever SLA you determine is best for your business. I will say that contact with leads is much higher the sooner you reach out and greatly diminishes with the more time that passes before you attempt to make contact. So this SLA is important. Now that you have your trigger, a lead arrives, and an SLA for making contact, you'll need to decide and write out all of the details. This will sound overwhelming, but these are the details required to create a consistent process. So you'll have to write this out. Who makes contact? Is it you? Is it your assistant? If you don't have an assistant, obviously it's you. What's said when contact is made? Hint, you need a script for this as well as pre-written email and text templates. What's the call to action given to the lead? Completing an online app, sending docs, etc. What's the SLA for you or your assistant to send them a follow-up email with the link to the app or the instructions on next steps, whatever's relevant? What's the SLA for following up if the lead fails to take action on this? What's the SLA for following up when the lead does take action on this? Who's responsible for this? Who pulls credit? Who fills in the gaps and actually pre-approves or otherwise dispositions the application? What communications do you have with the lead when they are pre-approved? Email templates, text templates, phone scripts, next steps. What's the SLA for doing this? Same question for the referral partner who sent the lead. What happens if the lead can't be pre-approved right now? What if they need credit repair? What's the process for this? Do you have a credit repair person ready to refer to? Do you have templates for these communications set up? What's the SLA and who's responsible? On and on and on. Now, the best outcome or the highest form of success for this trigger is you end up with a pre-approved buyer. You want to track this conversion closely. Your lead to pre-approval conversion ratio. This number is very telling, both to the quality of your leads and referral partners, as well as the quality and consistency of your process for this phase. The more pre-approvals you have, the more loans you'll close. So increasing your lead to pre-approval ratio is something that should receive regular focus. Let's take a look at the next phase of the loan. Pre-approval to contract. This is where many loan officers lose business and simultaneously the easiest part of the process to hone in on. You absolutely cannot lose touch with your pre-approvals while they're out shopping. So it's the same structure. What's the SLA for following up with them? Who's responsible? What's said and what do you ask of them? How can you use this time to increase your pre-approval to contract conversion ratio? How can you continue to build file quality and be ready to strike when the contract hits with an up-to-date file? The answers to all these questions and more is where the rubber meets the road. We cover this in extensive detail in the 5 Foundations coaching program. If you follow the example I've just given you, you can sit down and map this out for yourself, and you'll have a lot better process than what you have today. If you're interested in the coaching program, then we'll do this together through all the 5 phases of the loan. Lead to pre-approval, pre-approval to contract, contract to conditional underwriting approval to funding, and post-closing. And what you'll end up with is a complete A to Z bulletproof process that not only makes your life easier and reduces the time and stress with each loan, but actually works to attract even more business to you because your clients and referral partners have such a positive experience. So write down any questions you might have and send them to me, and I'll personally answer each one. We're getting close to having to begin wrapping up the webinar, so we need to move on to the final of the 5 foundations. So far, we've talked about mindset, time management, lead generation, and process. In each foundation, I've attempted to give you actual, actionable strategies and techniques that you can use immediately today without having to purchase a coaching program. I want to make sure your time today is well spent, even if you don't end up as a coaching student. That said, I cannot tell you how incredibly detailed and valuable the paid program is. The ROI is 1,000-fold over a year if you actually implement. That said, let's jump into the final foundation of the 5 foundations. So far, we've covered the top producer mindset, which is rooted in extreme ownership, accountability, and nonstop persistence. This is the mindset that is the table stakes for being in this business. Next, we talked about time management. This is the low-lying fruit of the business. Making more effective use of your time, respond rather than react, avoid decision drain, and build in a part of each day that's the same no matter what else is going on, an anchor. Next, we talked about how this daily anchor exists for you to do the 3 activities that drive nearly all the results in your business: learning, lead generation, loan building. We discussed how generating leads consistently requires you to commit to the activity, disconnect from the result, and give yourself enough at-bats for the law of averages to take over. If mindset's the table stakes and time management's the low-lying fruit, lead generation is the daily work, the sacrifice, the grind that's required to plow forward. Then we discussed process and how without an incredibly detailed, written-out process, you're just flailing. You're treading water and will always take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. The well-designed, detailed, specific, written, and adhered to process is the glue that holds your business together, the linchpin that keeps the wheels from flying off. When done right, it's also a giant magnet that attracts repeat business, both from happy referral partners and past borrowers. Finally, we're going to talk about what you need to do to grow from here. Assuming you do all these things we talked about today, you'll be ready to add to your team. Perhaps you're already there and this section of the webinar applies most to you. Either way, there's definitely a right way to grow and a wrong way to grow. And let me just say, if you're not ready to grow right now, don't just tune out at this section. Pay attention, because you always want to begin with the end in mind. As you perfect your mindset, time management, lead generation, and process, you'll begin to have this need to grow. So keep these things in mind while you do them so that you can structure yourself the right way. I've seen so many loan officers wait too long, hire the wrong people for the wrong role, make big oversights when onboarding, and fail to properly manage support staff. This almost always leads to a waste of time and money. Rather than leveraging the new support to grow, the business ends up taking a hit and things get worse. After making all of these mistakes myself more than once and seeing so many other LOs make these mistakes, I've laid out a process for exactly how to know when to hire, how to structure a new role, how to determine the ROI on the hire, how to structure comp, how to find talent, interview them, hire them, onboard them, and manage them in ways that lead to significant growth, efficiency, and return on investment. My 5 Foundations coaching students that are ready for this phase work closely with my team to exactly this. For today, I want to go over the main points and give you an action plan if you're one of the LOs on this webinar who's ready to add a team member. Here's the main points. First, adding support staff is not simply a factor of how many units you're closing. Some popular coaching programs will have you believe that for every 4 or 5 units closed, you should have another assistant. And while this may be true in some cases, it's incredibly one-dimensional. It leaves out so many other important factors. This is one of the reasons many new hires don't work out as intended. If you want to boil it down to its simplest form, the right time to hire is when you can demonstrate a significant return on investment for the hire. It's that simple. Can you create a written plan that shows an ROI sufficient to justify the hire? Let's talk about how to do that. Before you can even begin to think about this, you better make sure your process is tuned in. Your process needs to be written out with detailed SOPs, standard operating procedures, and SLAs, service level agreements. Then you need to determine what your personal highest and best use is. Are you a rainmaker who can go out and build relationships and generate leads and just need more time to focus on that? Hopefully you are, because this is the absolute highest and best use of a loan officer. If you're not, that's okay though. Maybe you're a technical loan officer and you're great at fitting a square peg into a round hole, structuring deals, maneuvering through guidelines, calculating difficult self-employment income, etc. If this is you, and you'd rather build loans and solve problems than build relationships and generate leads, there's a path for you too. As long as you know your highest and best use, we can structure the best support possible. Once you know what you need to be doing all the time, you'll be able to see the areas that you need someone else to do. Make a list of these things. Then go over the list. Is this something one person can accomplish? Likely it won't be. This list will probably consist of tasks that would require more than one person to handle completely. That's okay. Now, pull out all the tasks on the list that are most important to allowing you to focus as much as possible on your highest and best use. Once this list resembles the reasonable task list of one person, meaning one person can accomplish all of these things to a satisfactory level by working a standard work week, then you're ready to write out your job description. For this, you need to be as detailed as possible. Explain in the job description not only what the tasks are that the candidate will perform, but what personality traits, skill sets, and work style the ideal candidate should possess. Having this role designed with this detail will go a long way in attracting the right person to fill the role. Now it's time to look at hiring this person. What impact will this person, this hire, have on your business on a financial level? Assuming you find out and hire this person, how much of your time will that free up? How long will it take you to onboard and train this person before you actually free up your time? When you have a rough idea of the time savings you'll generate, you have a plan for how you'll actually spend this time on your highest and best use. Now project the business impact on leads generated and loans closed based on this additional focus on your highest and best use, and you'll have a projected additional revenue figure. Cut this number in half. This is the maximum compensation for your new hire. Essentially, 100% gross ROI is your threshold in general. There are always exceptions, but for straight support assistance, this is a good number to look at. Chances are you'll be able to generate 10x this ROI if you do things right. If you're interested in learning the rest of this formula and learning the techniques to carry this process all the way to the point where you have your ideal hire functioning in the role and you're making ROI, reach out to me about the 5 Foundations Coaching Program. For today, I think we've covered a sufficient cross-section of the 5 foundations and how they apply to your business. And hopefully, you've walked away from today's webinar and start implementing some of the things you've learned. If you have any questions, please email them to me, and I'll get back to you personally. If you want more information on the coaching program, please either reach out to me by email, schedule a phone call using the link in the follow-up email we'll send you, or simply sign up for the program. We'll send you an email with all of this information. As a special incentive, if you're ready to take action and sign up today, I'll give you a 25% discount. Email me for the code. Thank you so very much for your time today, and I hope to speak with you soon.